go.
Oh, baby.
Nigel L. Johnson. How we doing, buddy?
I am. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good.
Man, it's good to see you.
Yeah, I'm glad to get you on the show.
Finally, right?
So I just wanted to bust out the gate and straight up like apologize to you like wholeheartedly about the whole Sad Man's Parade thing with me drumming.
It's all right, bro. I'm like, it is what it is. Cause like, here's the thing, like, we already use your words. We were already prepared, to do what we had to do, in case we had to find somebody else or whatever. If we're, just backtracking again, especially because, and I'm not gonna say anything about it, but a certain somebody did offer us to get on a show at the end of the year, and he straight up said, "I just need y'all on this show. I don't even care if you have a drummer. Like, you can put that wacky inflatable two flailing arm man back up if you really want to." And I was like, "All right, bro." Like,
I already know about what that is, but I'm not gonna say anything. That's zip lips on that one.
yes, sir.
But yeah, what it came down to is I'm just like at a point in my life where if I'm gonna do something, I want to give it 100%. And I also think you guys deserve somebody like behind the kit who's gonna give it their 100%. I don't want your performance or your band to suffer at all because I'm not giving it my 100%. And this is in terms of like, just so everybody knows what we're talking about, is I was going to fill in on drums for Sad Man's Parade, but I decided to drop out. But yeah.
For those of y'all that don't know, Sad Man's Parade is your next favorite anime themed band. So,
and they're fucking sick.
I appreciate that. But so more often than anything, I appreciate your integrity on that. One thing I really learned, especially in 2023, is I completely I overwhelmed myself and took on way too much work. Because it was the first year I was really trying to take, my entrepreneurial venture seriously. And the same trap that most entrepreneurs run into when they first start off is they're like, oh yeah, any opportunity I can get, I'm gonna take it. I'm a hard worker. I'm gonna, I'll stay up all night if I need to, kind of a thing. And eventually you do realize, like, one, there's only so much energy you have, and two, there's only so much quality and focus you can put into multiple things at once. One of my favorite quotes I've been trying to live by, very recently, is this YouTuber I watch a lot named Alex Ramosi, and he has a quote about focus that says something along the lines of, "Focus is the measure of your ability to say no to anything that isn't the thing you said you would do." I think it speaks for itself in that, like, if you, and what that also taught me is, like, in the same way that there's short and long term goals, there's also short and long term focus. And you can have good short term focus and, be good at time blocking and, stuff like that. But if you have like a goal you're trying to achieve, any other thing that takes up a lot of your time is taking away focus from that. And, um, the worse your ability to say no to things like that, the worse your long term focus is. Um, and the great things like building things from the ground up and things like that, it takes a long time. It takes dedication, but most importantly, it takes the kind of focus that requires you to be able to say no to things. Like, just because something's a good opportunity doesn't necessarily mean it's a good opportunity for you.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's also like a time thing. Like I'm trying to think of what I was gonna say. It's like I feel like where I'm at at this point in my life, like I'm doing this podcast and I like have zeal that I'm trying to like take off,
Mhm.
and like I'm trying to also like work a full-time job while doing all that, and then just like managing family. And I really wanted to help you guys is like what it came down to, and then like I just found out that I just couldn't, and it's
No, it didn't be like that. More than anything, I appreciate that you let us know now.
yeah.
Then like later down the line, where it's just like, oh, okay, well, we're not gonna have time to like find someone. Not that it would have mattered anyway. The good news is there is there's one guy we might be working with soon.
Oh yeah.
So hopes up for that. But we'll see what happens. We trucking along as we got to do anyway.
Oh yeah.
Um, but yeah, you were saying just it is a time thing, and the thing is like time's the only thing you can't get more of.
Hmm.
You can get more money, you can get more cars and guitars and all type of stuff. Time's the only thing you don't get more of, and your ability to spend it wisely, is very very important, especially when you're trying to build something great.
Hmm.
So,
Oh yeah. Well, kind of want to talk about AMF a little bit.
what about it?
I don't know. I mean, it was for what it's worth, the years that we spent doing it, I like do value greatly. It kind of ended not the greatest, but sometimes that happens, and sometimes it's just like it's a band-aid you need to rip off in order to grow, and that type of situation.
Oh yeah. So there's this story, and I'm not gonna tell the whole story because it goes a while, but like, there's a quote from it that I like to live by nowadays that says, "Everything happens for the best." Um, and first off, I'll tell anybody that like listen now, like in hindsight, um, that band should have died long before it did, and I was honestly keeping it going out of spite.
Dude, honestly, now that you say that, that kind of makes sense.
It no, it I was in hindsight now, I was completely keeping it going out of spite, and it should have just died a long time ago. It would
Yeah, I
have
mean, I agree
like
for being real.
it probably would have opened up the door and the opportunity to actually already probably have Sad Man's Parade established the way I wanted to, already as it is. But hindsight is 2020, as they say, and I'm not gonna sit here and talk about what I should have did and what I shouldn't have done or whatever. We looking forward.
Yeah, hell yeah.
um, for what it's worth, I Martyr's Fall was my first like real band, and that's basically where I learned everything. It's not I went into that band already with a lot of the skills I had on the guitar and whatnot, but like I really learned how to be a performer there. It led to a lot of great opportunities, where I got to play around in other bands and whatnot. I think there was a last year I ended up counting like I've been a part of 8 different bands in the local scene since I
Damn.
got in it. Um, like it didn't even occur to me like I just been around. So, uh,
The local scene guitar whore.
guitar whore. Yeah.
I'm just
Um,
playing, dude.
hey, it is what it is. Rest in peace. Rest in peace, Martyr's Fall.
Yeah, rest in peace. I mean, what was your favorite show that you played with the Martyrs Fall, though?
My favorite show. It's okay. Arguably, it's between. It's two of them. One, it was the one and only show we played at the Miramar. Um, when I believe it was.
The Of Glaciers?
It was yeah.
I
It
was
was
at that show.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was
that
of
I
like
remember that was actually like where I like met you guys. Like, cause me and Tomas were actually there, and I remember just like after watching you guys play, I was just like, "Bro, you shred!" And little did I know that would start like a fucking lifelong friendship and shit. So that's
yeah.
fucking
Like
yeah, that show was dope.
um. So it was either that one or the one we played in 2015 at Summerfest because that was probably the most people we'd ever played in front of. I keep my hands to myself here. I'm over here moving your cameras, but
Weren't the like fire? I was at that one too, and the fireworks were going on during like Call to Arms, weren't they?
yeah, no, that like literally the fireworks started going off right at the end of our set, and it couldn't have been more perfect.
Didn't some fucking lady like come up to Ryan and was like, "You guys are ruining the fireworks."
So she came up to Carl actually, like in the middle. She's like, "You guys are ruining the fireworks," and I think Carl was like, "Okay, well you can go f yourself."
Yeah, type
Like
shit.
I don't
Like,
know if
what?
we can swear on this podcast or not. I didn't ask, but
We'll bleep it out if it's in the first 10 minutes, basically. I'm not even monetized yet, so I guess it doesn't really matter.
hey, fair enough, fair enough.
um,
Yeah, it was honestly either one of those two. The problem is I also don't I actually don't remember a lot of the shows that we did.
yeah,
Beside
a
like
lot of them blurred together, kind of.
yeah, it's just after a while you don't remember 5 minutes ago, and especially too like I think the year 2016, 2017, when like all the like internal band drama started happening and whatnot, and like, because I remember that was like the point where I got like the most depressed I'd ever been in my entire life. Um, and um, yeah, no, like I have almost no memory of like 2016 or 17 for that matter.
You know
Um,
what? We push on, we push forward.
yes, sir.
um, so I want to know kind of about like your well, I guess before we get into your like musical journey, I want to know, did you always have that like one thing I could say about you is you have like this like insatiable like drive for things, like whether it be like guitar or production or I don't know, just like well, even being like a mentor, like things like that. Like did you have that like kind of insatiable drive like when you were younger, like towards other things, like before you got into music?
Y- Yeah, yes and no. It really so a lot of it had to do with me just being like this ADHD kid that like could hyper focus on something for a long time. Like so before I really got into like playing guitar, um, I all I did was play video games. Like
Oh yeah.
growing up, I would do sports and stuff like that. Like freshman year of high school, I remember I did football that year because if you were a boy, you did football. Like, and if you were basically if you were a dude that and you weren't on the football team, you wasn't nobody. I only did it that one year because I immediately learned that I don't care about football and I didn't like the coaches or the players. Um, so after that, I also realized I just really prefer sports where the individual is responsible for their own performance. Um,
I kind of agree with that. Like
like
like wrestling, that's why I was big into wrestling.
I was gonna say, you were a wrestler too, weren't you?
Mhm.
I remember that. No, like wrestling, yeah, wrestling was my thing, and like from that point on, like every other year, I would do soccer to get in shape for wrestling season. Um, but beyond that, it was just video games. I love video games. Right before I started learning how to play guitar, I was heavy into Guitar Hero. Like I got to the point where like I was like beating through the fire and flames on expert, and I'm just like, all right, you nerd. Um, but um, no, so funny story actually. The very first guitar I actually got was when I was 9 years old. I got it for Christmas. And because I was going to daycare at the time, and there was this teacher named Mr. K, who he played guitar. He was heavy into the Beatles and whatnot. And like I took a couple lessons with him, like learned some stuff here and there. But like at the time, I didn't care enough about the instrument to really focus on it. I destroyed that guitar. I'm gonna be like, I destroyed it, bro. Um, but looking back, what's funny is like I always kind of had a very natural musical ability because when we were in third, did y'all get like the recorders in grade school and
Mhm.
whatnot?
Yeah.
I remember when, excuse me, when they gave us ours. Like I would sit there and sometimes my brother would be playing video games. I'd be sitting there like learning all the video game tunes by ear, like like pitch perfect.
Oh yeah.
Um, and they were like, "Oh, like, damn, okay, I see. I see you out here." But it's funny because then I finally picked it back up when I was 18. So for all intents and purposes, I started playing guitar when I was 18 years old,
Mhm.
and by then, like, because Guitar Hero at that point, it got to a point where it wasn't just a game for me anymore. It became like this experience where I'm like, damn, I'm really up here. I'm just having a great time. Like, I'm playing Guitar Hero with a power stance. Like, um, like
Oh yeah.
you like you really think you a rock star for real, don't you? Like, but so I got the guitar. I bought it off Ryan Kubaki, other guitar player from Martyrs Fall. Uh,
What was it?
um, it was a white Squire.
Do you still have that?
I do still
I
have
feel
it.
like I've seen that
I
one.
still play it.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's not a bad guitar at all.
Dude,
Um,
Squires are underrated in my opinion.
no, like the only issue with Squires is that like sometimes the quality control isn't that great, but if you
Yeah.
get a good Squire, chef's kiss. Um, I digress. I got that guitar, and when I am not kidding, I played it for 8 hours a day, like average. I would get home from school, and that just became the new reason I didn't do homework. Like I would dead ass play it 8 hours a day. I would literally wake up sometimes, like, and like in the morning, and the guitar would be in my hand. Like, um,
So you just fell asleep playing it?
I would literally fall asleep playing the instrument, and it's it really just it boiled down to like the amount of work that I put into it. First off, it didn't feel like work to me. It was
Mhm.
just it was a great experience. I didn't mind, sitting there, rewinding, a YouTube video, like 8, 10 times until I finally understood what I was doing. Um, and I'd gotten to the point, like so first off, when you do something for 8 hours a day every day, you're gonna get good at it real fast. A month into playing, I remember going to Ryan's house one day, and I was just like, because like Ryan was like, he was my first like guitar teacher. He was the first one. I was like, hey, how do you do this? How do you do that? How do you make this thing make sound? Like, and he was the one teaching me. About a month later, I showed up to his house, and I'm like, yo, look what I can do. And the guitar solo at the end of the song, "One" by Metallica, I ripped it. And he was just like, what the like and like I started to develop a reputation for like, oh, this dude basically just learned how to play guitar overnight. And hearing a lot of like oh, you got a God-given talent and whatnot, and like not to discredit like any of that and whatnot, on the like the spirituality side and whatnot, but it is also the like that's also the result of playing it for 8 hours a day, every day.
Yeah, hell
Like,
yeah.
it was an obsession at that point. Like, it actually reminds me of one of my favorite Conor McGregor quotes. He said, like, "There is no talent, there's only obsession." Like,
Hell yeah.
that's how it was for me.
That's how it's gotta be.
Oh, yeah.
If you're gonna become to like, get to your level of guitar, you kinda have to be like that. Um, so do you remember when you were learning, uh, what obstacles you had to, like, overcome in order to get, like, proficient? Like, if you have, like, any, like, specific ones, like, even if it's, like, talking technique-wise, like, that you struggled with for a while and then
So, that's a good question because I don't really have any big memory of, like, struggling. Like, I like there was a point where I'm just like it wasn't, like my hands just kind of weren't doing the thing or whatever. But I have very, very, very little memory of like not knowing how to play the instrument. But it was also because a lot of my memories to it are tied to just having a really good time like learning the instrument. And, because that's really what it boils down to. The other thing that really, really helped more than anything, and because this is what I see a lot when like I talk to people, and they're like, oh, sometimes every now and then I tell them like, oh yeah, I do guitar, lessons, stuff like that. I do guitar lessons, by the way.
oh,
Um,
hit 'em up.
appreciate it. But like, they'll talk to me. Oh, I've always wanted to know how to play the guitar. Oh, I wish I could play the guitar. I'm like, You can. You literally can." And they're like, "Oh, just maybe. I don't know." The biggest thing I learned, because I realized it about myself when I first started playing. I immediately knew what I wanted to play when I got the instrument. Like I knew I wanted to, play heavier stuff and metal and stuff like that at the time. I specifically knew I wanted to know how to solo and like shred and like rip bass. So when I got the guitar, that's immediately what I went to. Like I just immediately went to YouTube and jumped straight to the hard stuff.
So, that kinda leads into another question I had, which was what, uh, like, influences were you taking from when you started? I know you said Metallica, but what else was there?
So at the time I was basically just because I also had Guitar Hero Metallica at the time, so I was very familiar with the Metallica stuff. Um, when I first started, arguably the biggest influence was probably Kirk Hammett because I was learning a lot of his stuff. Um, but honestly, that's really the only one I can really pinpoint when I first started. Because I also just what also made it fun was I also just learned whatever I wanted to. Besides that, like there was a point where like 3 months in, I learned, like I started learning finger picking stuff too. I was learning "Dust in the Wind" by what's that band, Kansas, right?
Mhm.
Yep, it better be Kansas, or I'm gonna look real dumb on this pod.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I'll seem dumb as fuck for that, just then.
um, but it was that. Like there's a lot of songs I can pinpoint that I learned that like in hindsight I'm like, oh, completely see why I write the way that I do now. Um, one of them was actually Reptilia by the Strokes.
Oh, hell yeah, that's a fun song to play.
Hmm.
I remember I was just, like, at a jam session at, I think it was, like, a couple of years ago, New Year's or something, but we were at Jameson's house, and he'll just, like, have, like, jam sessions. He'll have, like, a bunch of musicians over, and we'll just fucking jam, and I just remember busting I, like, learned that song, like, on bass in a second, and then I was like, "Yo, let's play this," and then everybody got into it. That's a great song.
You just locked in
Hell
like it.
yeah.
Um,
So how would you say that your sound has evolved throughout the years?
so what's funny now is like everybody, even to this day, everybody always knows me as like, like the shredder, I can, play real fast, stuff like that, which is funny because like when I pick up a guitar nowadays and I'm like playing on my own accord, I like to play a lot of like clean tones. I like to play a lot of soft, like neo soul, like, just, real pretty, fancy chords and, like the stuff that, soothes my soul. Stuff that, like sets the vibe in the room and makes
Hell yeah.
everybody just like,
Anytime
damn.
you're posting like videos of playing that clean shit, I'm always just like, fucking Nigel.
Like that,
Get me in the feels and shit.
that's what I'm trying to do. But I think of, because nowadays a big thing where it's a combination of two things. So one, I believe it was like 2015 when um I remember watching Prince. He was playing a concert in 1985 and he was doing an extended version of Purple Rain at the end of his concert. And that was the first time I understood the concept of making a guitar sing. Like it wasn't about, trying to, say, hey, look at me, look what I can do. Cause I went through that phase where like, I could shred. So anybody, I was gonna make sure any and everybody knew. I could have been working at Subway and just like, what do you want in the sandwich? Nope, you're getting sweet picking. Like, um, but
Yeah,
like,
when you start to get into stuff that like has more nuance, you realize that shredding is almost easier than the nuanced shit where it's like you're like how hard you're picking matters and like your finger on the like where your finger is on the fret matters and like shit like that.
hmm no, there's only so many ways you can just play the same scales and arpeggios all like over and over again until after a while it's like, okay, bro, we get it. Um, But, the first time, like I said, it was Prince playing, it was the solo to Purple Rain, 1985, and that was the first time I understood the concept of he made this thing sing. Like it sounded like a lady singing like in a church choir, and I'm like, it was the first time I heard a guitar solo that made me cry. And after that, I was like, I get it now.
Yeah.
Like it's the concept of like, what story are you telling when you play this guitar solo? What story are you telling when you compose anything at all? Um, and that's the biggest approach I take. And it's especially been helpful now that I am also an engineer and a producer. Because being a producer, they're basically hiring you for your musical opinion. They're like, I want you to help me bring my art to life, and that's my job is to use my expertise to help them bring their art to life. And that's also been a big thing that's been helpful too because it's one thing to bring your own art to life. But when you have to basically, you know, you are now working for somebody else, you have to help them bring their vision forward. There's only so much of, your influence you can impart on it. Um, so, at that point, that's a big thing I do now. Like when I'm writing anything is, what I just think to myself, like what story am I trying to tell? And that's what helps me dictate, what kind of chords I use, what kind of, drum patterns I use, what kind of, lyrics I'll write, this and that, blah, blah. Because that's the thing is like you start learning, like certain chords have certain, vibes to them. Like, majors happy and upbeat, minors, a little sad and somber, augmented, make you kind of feel like you're floating in space, diminished is like, bordering on like scary and, stuff like that. And just knowing stuff like that, it's like, what emotion am I trying to evoke? Because that's the biggest thing that I learned as well a while ago is that art's number one job above all else is to evoke emotion. It's the only thing we evolved as a species that we didn't evolve out of survival. We evolved it to feed the soul. Um, So its number one job, and it's always going to do that. Any art you look at or listen to, it's going to evoke emotion. Sometimes it's just like, whoa, this, I'm sad right now, but this art understands me. Sometimes it's just like, whoa, this just put me in a great mood. It makes me want to dance and whatnot. Sometimes you listen to a song, you're like, wow, I hate this fucking song. Um, but
Makes you feel something
either
though.
way, you feel something from it. Like, it's your art's number one job is to evoke emotion.
Oh yeah. Um. So what is your creative process like when you're writing songs nowadays? Like, do you have any like rituals or habits that you use to like get yourself in the mindset or like find inspiration type of thing?
Um, so arguably I have a couple of them. So one of my favorite things to do, nowadays, and this is when I started, hanging with Sam and Andy. Is like sometimes you just gotta sit in front of the computer and just make something. And a lot of because what they'll do a lot of times they'll make like shit posty songs. Like they're bad on purpose because the goal is they're trying to make each other laugh. Um, so you sit there and like you literally all you're trying to do is make each other laugh. So you're just recording like, dumb melodies, like purposely bad, vocals. You're like purposely like clipping your master bus and like stuff like that. Anything that makes them laugh. But the beauty in that is that it takes away like the limitation. It takes away this need to make you feel like this has to be good. So when you're in a position where it's like this, you're no longer limited to the fact that this has to be good per se. You're free to do whatever you want now. The amount of times where I've been sitting there, I just make something just for the hell of it or whatever, and it's just like, all right, yeah, this sounds bad, but like it's funny. But then there have been other times where like you start working on something, it's like, haha, yeah, it's funny, but actually this sounds kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of them. Two, a big thing that I do as well is I one thing I don't do anymore when I'm writing is I don't attempt to impart my creative will on a piece of music. Um, if I start writing a song, and it starts with just like one part, I literally follow that creative, rabbit hole wherever it's gonna go. Because sometimes, you start writing a song and you have this idea in mind of like, oh, so this is what I want it to be. This is, how I want this song to go. These are the lyrics that I want it to be about. Um, and by the time you get done writing it, it might not necessarily be that anymore. There might be subtle changes. It might be a completely different song by the time you're done doing it. But one thing, that I've found that just doesn't, help me, and I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say it doesn't really help anybody, is trying to impart your creative will on a piece of music. The best songs I feel like you might be able to relate to this. Some of the best songs you've ever written feel like they wrote themselves. Like
Yeah.
you just sat down and you just wrote and you just kept going, and before you knew it, you just had a song. And it's just like, damn, how'd you write this one? And it's like, I don't know. This one just like I feel like I was just the medium for some bigger force that needed to bring this song to life.
Yeah, that's it. That's like kind of like an interesting thing I've heard recently. I've actually heard Joe Rogan talk about it. How like the way we view ideas like isn't quite like right almost. Like you view it as like something that just like pops in your brain basically, but like I don't know. The way he described it is like an idea is like an actual thing that like we it's kind of hard to explain. It's kind of like a spiritual thing almost.
Hmm.
Like where like our mind just like kind of like can like grab these things from the universe
It's
and then
yeah.
apply them like type of thing.
I gotta
I
make
don't
sure.
know.
I'll just make sure I'm not cutting you off and being rude. But yeah, no, it's an abstract concept that you're trying to make a tangible thing. And a lot of times where not only does it help me with my own creative endeavors, but it helps me a lot when I'm in a creative endeavor with other people because a lot of that's what makes co-writing with other people so hard is like you know the more married you are to an idea, the harder it's going to be for you to say no to it if somebody's just like, I don't know about that, maybe we could try it this way. A big thing I do is when I started writing with Andy, um, one thing I immediately started realizing that makes him and I write so well together is that if I come up with an idea, like a song idea, it can be a fully fleshed out idea. But the whole thing, I'll just bare bones it, like basic, chord progression on the guitar, basic drums, the whole thing. And then I hand it off to him and I tell him, okay, cool, here you go, make it fancy. And the reason I do that is because the more involved my idea becomes, the more likely I am to be married to it. And the more likely I'm to be married to it, the more I'm likely he's gonna like change something. I'm just like, no, I didn't want you. I wanted it this way. Instead, now I just hand it off to him. He gives it back, and he's like, "This is what I came up with," and I'm like, "Perfect." Like this is greatest thing I've heard since the last thing you showed me. um,
Oh yeah.
and it's especially helpful. What it's most importantly, what that's helped me to do is it keeps me from having an ego about my creative ideas and my creative endeavors, because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is that everybody who's writing that piece of music together likes what's in it.
Mhm.
And you're never going to be able to avoid, like, there's going to be some compromise,
Yeah.
every now and then, but like at the end of the day, your ability to go, does this song still get the point across, that we're trying to? If you can answer that question and say yes, it's good.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of had to deal with something like that today because there's this little synth that I like in our latest mix, and it's just like this thing at the end that just it's kind of like a whirling thing, and I thought it sounded cool, and then everybody basically told me today that they hated it, and I was just like, oh, well, fine, I guess that idea isn't going in.
You say, "Oh, yeah, yeah, I hate it too."
Definitely, yeah, I hated it the whole time actually.
I was just testing you. But yeah, it's one of those. Sometimes you're not always gonna be able to avoid it. I'm actually getting ready to my boys in Tamara. Shout out to Tamara, by the way. I'm getting ready to hand them their final master for the song they just recorded with me. And so first off, recording with them this time, it was a very enjoyable experience because when they showed up, they basically did what I did to Andy. They came with this like bare bones idea, and they're like, "All right, so basically, I was like, so how much do you want me to impart like my creative?" Like they're like, "Bro, do whatever." And by the time we were done with it, they basically they were like, you took this idea that we just had, it was this super rough idea, and you turned it into something we couldn't have even imagined, that it was gonna be. And what I like more than anything about that is like it's a song I genuinely enjoy, like of all the stuff I've ever heard from them, because like I met their guitar player Zarbs when I was going to school in MATC. So it's been about a decade now, over a decade actually. And so I was there to witness them, Tamara from their inception, like all the music they did back then. Of all the stuff they've ever done, this song they just did has been the most well received. Not only has it been the most well received, but it like honestly, I think they're onto something. I'm telling 'em, like I think you guys need to go in this direction. But even then, because like as a producer, that artist is essentially bringing you on, or that band, they're essentially bringing you on. They're saying like you're basically an honorary extra member now. Um, and so I'm imparting ideas, like, synths and all types and this and that and blah blah blah. And problem is they live in Iowa, so if I throw in some ideas I think are cool or whatever, and then they come back and they're like, yeah, I don't really like this and that and blah 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 blah. I'm just like, all right, cool. Like, I liked it. I thought it made it better, but ultimately my job is to bring your vision to life.
Mhm.
So yeah, we can work around it. We can do this and that and blah blah blah. Um, but yeah, I kind of digressed a little bit. My point was that keeping the ego out of it.
Mhm.
Because then that's when feelings start getting hurt, and like blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Ultimately, y'all just trying to make some banger
Yeah.
tunes.
I think that's like a good piece of advice is just like when you're like working, when you're like collaborating with others, like just like keep your ego at bay, be self-conscious or not self-conscious, self-aware about it,
Hmm. Yeah,
like
I think that is if I could pinpoint like a ritual I'll actually do in any musical scenario, I kind of and I don't even think about it anymore. I do this thing where like I literally like essentially kind of do this like leave the ego at the door thing. Um because like you drop something. um like essentially it's a leave the ego at the door because and I haven't really been in a position where I had to find out the hard way, but like one thing I'll always tell anybody that'll listen and whatnot is humility is not a lesson you want to have to learn the hard way. I've seen enough people throughout the years of being in the scene like let their ego destroy bands. I've seen it happen enough times where it's just humility is not a lesson you want to learn the hard way.
I feel like I don't I don't I don't know. Feel like certain bands earlier on kind of like did that thing, like the the ego thing, and then I feel like that's part of the reason why the scene is so cool now because everybody saw like what those bands did and was like, no, I don't want any part in that shit.
No, like that's one thing I completely agree. It's like I feel like what's different this time around with our scene is that like we're like making this both conscious and unconscious effort to like steer clear of bands that are just like feel like that they carry themselves like, oh, we're better than everybody else. Like we don't have room for that.
Right.
Like first off, like we're all grown ass adults now. Like
Right.
um
Exactly.
none of that.
Um so do you want to talk about your like schooling at all? Like I guess the main question I had like who were your this doesn't even necessarily just have to be with schooling, but who were your mentors when you were like coming up?
Um so schooling is definitely a weird thing for me because like so first off the very first semester of schooling I had I actually was going for digital electronics. I was learning how to like work on circuit boards and like build digital stuff like that. um and I did one semester that it was cool, it was fun at times, but like I just knew it wasn't for me. So I switched over to the music program. Um and I will say to MATC's credit, they had a very great music program.
Yeah,
Um
I've heard that from multiple people.
they had
That
a
they're
great music program. And um an interesting thing about that is like because I was going to school for music for a bit and whatnot, and I was taking like a lot of the guitar classes. And of course I went in there thinking like well, I'm already a shredder, so this is going to teach me how to shred extra good. um and I guess to a certain degree it does, but like at one it was very very theory based. um so that's where I really got to get my reins in like music theory and stuff like that, which has been, very, very helpful for me. And I know, like, first off, there's this weird phenomenon in the guitar world where, like, guitar players just love to go, like, oh, I don't know theory and I do just fine. Like, and it was sort of the same thing with me. Like, I was, shredding face before I even knew, like any theory or whatever. But one thing I learned about theory is because once I started actually learning about it, what I learned is that I actually already understood a lot of the concepts. I just didn't know that's what it was called. Like modes. Like I remember like trying to learn about it on my own. I'm just like, yeah, I don't get this. This just sounds pretentious. Blah 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 blah. Got to music school, had my teacher explain it, and I'm just like, oh wait, these things. And then I just played, and he's like, yeah, those things. I'm like, oh, okay. like um, so one thing I learned is like if you already have the ability to stay in key on time, stuff like that, you already understand theory. You just don't know the fancy terms.
Mhm.
And it's one of those things that it's very much worth learning because it makes the communication process a lot easier. I digress. I'm not trying to make this the focus. You asked me about school. So anyways, I was doing that for a little bit, and schooling, that was I did some of the guitar stuff. I actually took some drum classes there. I did some voice lessons there too. Which oddly enough were actually helpful in me learning how to like learn like proper screaming technique because I didn't learn it from my voice instructor there. Shout out to Julie Brandenburg, by the way. I hope you're doing well. If by chance you would see this, so
Shout out.
shout out. No, she was wonderful. I miss her. Um, but while I was doing like voice lessons there or whatever, I became, a lot more confident in my voice and my singing. But it actually gave me the foundation I needed to learn like proper like screaming technique and whatnot. And then oddly enough, that circled back around into me learning proper screaming technique, which ended up making me a better clean singer. Which it was just like this big, circle. Um, because oddly enough, I feel like it wasn't until like the last like 2-3 years maybe that I really actually feel like I figured out my voice and found it. Um, like before, like I'll go stuff like I wasn't bad, like
Well, dude, I
like
will say, not to fucking like suck your dick or anything, but from the like first AMF record to the Sad Man's Parade stuff, it's like you don't even sound like the same person at all. Like, your scream is fucking awesome, dude. Like that fry you do, like I love it. It's fun.
thank
You like, you it's just goes to show that this guy fucking when he sets his mind to something, he fucking does it, does
hey,
it like phenomenally. So,
it's all for the love of the game, baby. Like it, and that's why I'm excited for Sad Man's Parade because, like, yeah, everybody's like knows, not, Nigel the guitar player and whatnot. I've always wanted to, front a band, so this is finally my opportunity to do that and whatnot. I get to finally move around and dance around and like shimmy and salsa around and whatnot. But I digress. As I was nearing the end of like the degree I was going to get for the music or whatever, I ended up taking one of the audio classes as an elective and then fell in love with it. And then so I just switched over to the audio program and it was just over from there. Ended up, going through the whole program, learning a whole bunch of stuff. I got to take some cool classes like learning how to do audio for video. I even took a social media marketing class where I ended up getting I have two certificates that I can put on a resume that says I know how an algorithm works. Um, but I got a lot of cool information from there or whatever. And it's interesting because like so many people like, you know, the thing about like, going to school for audio is like the first thing I'll tell people is like, first, you absolutely do not have to go to school to learn how to be a good audio engineer. Like, with that said, um, the way I look at it, like, and I realize it looking back now is like going to school for audio production nowadays, it's the kind of thing like that's good if like let's say when you getting in shape, like if you're the kind of person like you need a trainer to like keep you like, you know, what's the word I'm looking for here? Accountable. Like some people they can just work out on their own and like, go to the gym and do their own thing. Some people they need a trainer, to keep them accountable. Like if that's the kind of person you are like and you want to go to school for audio, by all means, that's for you. If you have the means to learn it on your own, it's gonna be way cheaper. Um, but I digress. Like I'm very grateful for the schooling I had. I will say most of the audio stuff that I learned, I actually learned like in the field when I started doing it professionally. But there's a lot of experience like the social media marketing classes, the audio for video, like and all that stuff that I might not have necessarily had the opportunity to get had I not actually gone to school for it. So I don't know if that answered your question or not.
oh, my question was, I mean, you touched on one, but
Okay.
well, it was basically about schooling, but also like who do you consider your mentors?
Mentors. That's right. That's right. So one of my mentors, Matt Smith, who I believe now is the head of the audio department at MATC.
Shout out.
So shout out Matt Smith. He was one of the first people that really made like show me like a realistic scenario where it is possible for you to actually make a living, doing music and doing audio. Because he has this big story where he's like for about 10 years straight he wrote at least one song a day every day. So like he was averaging like 5 new songs a week approximately. And he was mostly writing to get material licensed for commercials, for like movies, stuff like that. And that's where he gets a lot of his money. Like he gets mailbox money now. And he like I remember him telling a story like, sometimes like I'll just be sitting there watching TV and I won't realize that one of my tunes got licensed until a commercial comes on, and then it's just like, oh, I wrote that, like, and that was
Have you
crazy.
ever thought about doing some stuff like that?
I actually have.
Yeah.
There is I actually have gotten a couple of songs licensed and whatnot.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, a couple of years ago I had the opportunity with my boy Bushy B. Shout out Bushy B.
Shout out.
Um, he first off he came to me one day. He came to my studio and was just like, we're working, chopping it up, making music, and he mentions this in passing. He's like, "Oh, by the way, I got this opportunity to make a song for Playmaker Shoe Store and Apparel and whatnot, and I just need something in like 3 days." And I'm just at first I'm like, "Bushy, as your producer, that's something you tell. When did you know this?" He's like, "Oh, I found out like 2 weeks ago." I'm like, "You should have told me 2 weeks ago. Like we could have been working on it already then." But we ended up throwing it together. And it was really really cool. So it was for they were doing this limited edition drop for like a new Jordan. Um, it was called the Rebellionaire. And basically was telling the story of Jordan, how he came up in his career and how he kind of rejected the status quo and blah, this and that, blah blah blah, and then found the success that he did. And we threw a song together for that. Now, oddly enough, by the time we got the song finished and ready to present, it was technically too late. They had already picked somebody else for the event. They were already spinning it on the radio and in the commercials and stuff like that. But we still got the chance to meet with like the owner of the company. Played the song for him and he loved it so much. He's like, "We're using this one too."
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, no, that was great. So that was the first time I actually had the experience of getting to like license something out. And
So
have
do
it.
you just if you don't want to talk about this, you don't have to. But do you get some sort of like residuals from that?
I have right now. Right now it's not very much. But so speaking of which, I actually just recently looked up one of the artists that I produce. OMS Raw Dog. Shout out Raw Dog.
Shout
Um,
out.
Shouting out a lot of people today, but I just recently ended up on his Spotify. Um, just because I actually enjoy his music and whatnot, and was listening to stuff, and I looked it up, and I'm just like, oh, like his numbers shot up like a whole bunch since like we had started like all his top 5 songs or whatever they're all the way up now up to like the 5 digit range and whatnot. The highest one I think being at like currently at 60,000 plays. Um, the
Yeah.
coolest thing for me was looking at all 5 of those songs. I produced all of them.
Hell yeah.
So that was a big moment for me. Like I was
That's
just like,
fucking huge, dude.
yo,
Hell yeah.
like
That's what's up, bro.
no, like it's starting to it's starting to make this venture feel like it's worth it now. Like
Hell yeah.
um so that was big. And on top of that, like there's a couple other artists, that I've been, working with. I've been blessed and privileged enough to have had the opportunity to work with, like some bigger names in Milwaukee and whatnot. And a big part, I also learned a big part of that is that I learned real fast, because I do a lot of rap and hip hop. I
Mm.
learned real fast. Apparently, when I first started doing it, there was like a dire need for engineers and producers that actually care about their work. Um, so many people like just like, oh, I can just buy a microphone and a laptop and just record myself or
But
whatever.
that shit shows like not to like shit on any Milwaukee rappers, but a lot of it I heard, like you can tell that like it just wasn't produced good. And that's just a little disappointing. You
Hmm.
gotta sometimes you just gotta put the money in, you know?
Hmm. So going back earlier, like some of the mentors I kind of look up to now, like whether they know it or not. Mellow dropping 30. Very popular producer in Milwaukee. He's had a couple of artists that he's worked with, like crack over 1 million views on YouTube, stuff like that. Richie with the hit, same thing. With him, his music, has done pretty good numbers. Richie Slim, all of them, definitely, I look up to them because like what they've been able to accomplish, and the kind of things numbers they've done, and like it really showed me like, damn, like we can really, we can really do some, incredible things here in Milwaukee. Um, so that's what I'm chasing now. Like,
Hell yeah. Um, on
my apologies, I'm just rambling so
no, you're
much, but
good, dude. You're good. Uh, so who? Because I don't really know anything about the like rap hip hop scene in Milwaukee. So like, who are the artists? Would you say, other than the ones you mentioned already, that are popping off right now?
so right now, big one, uh, Chicken P. He's long since made a name for himself here. And is already starting to make a name for himself down in like like Atlanta, stuff like that. If you check his numbers and whatnot, like he has famous guy numbers like
Oh
on
yeah.
YouTube, on Spotify and whatnot. Like people know who he is. Yeah, that's definitely first one that come to mind. JP recently just started catching a buzz. Um, shout out Chicken P, shout out JP.
Shout out.
Big Frank. Bankhead, for rest in peace, Bankhead. He even some years back he was doing some good stuff, and I was lucky enough to not only get to work with Bankhead, him and I actually have a song together. That I don't know why I've been keeping it in the vault. Everybody that's ever listened to it, they're like, bro, why haven't you dropped this song yet? Like,
Do
um,
you have any like, are you gonna like do like some type of artist thing like with your,
like solo material or.
yeah, like solo material type of thing?
So eventually, yeah. Right now, I think I'm kind of in the process of, I guess, building my personal brand, if you will. Um, Started working out again, getting back in shape, especially after like this past summer, where I was lucky enough to start getting a lot more work. Doing stagehand work and William Signal stuff. Unfortunately, what I learned is that when you're doing that kind of work and you're working like 14-hour days on a regular basis, it's really hard to eat clean. Um, because I've definitely gained like 15 pounds in the last 2 months, and I'm not happy about it. But hey, whatever. We getting it back. We're getting back down. We getting back good looking and whatnot. Like I said, I'm literally just getting better looking over time anyway. Anyways, but yeah, I've actually over the years I've been building up a little bit of a catalog of my own. Um, I've been now I kind of want to. I personally kind of want to take a little bit of a different approach in that like I basically um I'm not going to be pigeonholed to like one specific genre. I'm literally just, gonna be release, whatever music I do, it can be, like metalcore, whatever, it could be, more hip hop based. Whatever I want to do. I'm just gonna release it under my name. Um, because so and this is me taking maybe this is me taking a little bit of a gamble, but I'm also just kind of looking at how the industry has changed, how people consume music. Like the way people consume music is so much different nowadays. Back in the day, you used to go have to buy a CD, and whatnot, and like hope the rest of it wasn't trash.
Dude, I remember trying to like right at the like kind of turn of like the internet and music, like just trying to stream a song on the internet was such a pain in the ass back in the day. Like now it's just like open up Spotify, songs right there.
Exactly. And the thing is now people, you can have playlists where you can jump from Lady Gaga to Beethoven to, Lil Baby to, Lana Del Rey to whoever. Like that, you can just, curate whatever playlist you want. The way people consume music is so much different now. So, I think it really kind of helps open up the door now to artists really being able to start doing whatever they want. Now there is, like I said, there's a little bit of a gamble there because there is also just the aspect of there's the branding aspect too of like, um, as an artist, one really important thing, and this is one thing I realized like after all the research I've been doing the past few years on sales, business, marketing, and how it applies to being, in a band or being an artist, is I don't want to necessarily say one big thing that bands and artists get wrong is um not knowing your brand. Um and sometimes your brand like is like specifically like the music you do. Most of the time it's actually specifically the music you do. But the thing is it's also more than just the music now. It's about your ability to, like like the music's just not enough, anymore. Like you can have great music and whatnot, but it's just like, and especially if it's like if you do music where it's just like, okay, this sounds like this and that band, and blah 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 blah. Unless you're really like doing something that's never really been heard before, um, you get pigeonholed into sound like everybody else. And nowadays, because of how accessible equipment's become, and how the internet's made it so much easier for artists to be independent, you are easily now just a little droplet in an ocean of people trying to do the same thing you're doing. So your ability to stand out is extremely important. And like the song "Video Killed the Radio Star," even all the way back then, basically had the message of the music's not enough anymore. Now there's a visual, component to it. Now people are, listening with their eyes.
Mhm.
So your ability to know what your brand is 100%, will make the difference between your ability to easily market yourself, or you're going to have a hard time doing it. As a matter of fact, I'll go as far as to say that if you 100% know what your brand is as a band, an artist and whatnot, marketing becomes 10 times easier, because now you know specifically who your target audience is, and you know specifically how to market to them. So, let's take like Zeal for instance. Um, do you know your brand? Like, or are you guys still kind of figuring that out?
I don't know. I think we have a pretty good, like, I don't know. I guess what would you, because I guess if you were to ask me that, my like gut reaction would be like, we kind of have like, I don't know. I don't want to describe the music in that because I was gonna say like, I don't know. I guess we would, the best thing we could do is lean into the female fronted aspect of it. Is like that's kind of our brand, is like we're female fronted metal,
Right, right. So,
which is
and
kind of, as much as Holly would hate that I say this, is a novelty in itself, that a female being in front of like a heavy metal band.
mhm.
So I don't know. I guess that would be it.
Yeah, and yeah, unfortunately, that just kind of is how it is and whatnot. But this is the perfect time for a lesson. So essentially, you guys, trying to build something that you're trying to market and build a fan base with, you essentially are salesmen, saleswoman, respectfully. So with that information in mind, it's important to know what makes a good salesman. I have I have my own personal philosophy behind that. It's a bunch of small things, but all those things will fit into one of these two categories. One, the first thing that makes a great salesman is the ability to easily describe a product, to, explain a product as easily as possible. If I knock on your door, and I see, you're wearing like a smartwatch or something like that, I'm just like, hey, I see you wearing a smartwatch. And let's say, hypothetically speaking, you decide you're going to give me the time of day. You're like, okay, well, what makes your watch so much special? So much different than mine. And I'm having a hard time describing it to you. I'm just like, I can't show you the value in this thing. You're probably not going to buy that. As a matter of fact, you're not going to buy it. Now, if I knock on your door and I'm like, "Hey, I see you wearing this smartwatch or whatever," you give me the time of day and you're like, "What makes it so special?" I'm like, "Let me tell you. First off, I'm wearing one right now. Let me show you how this blows Apple Watch, Samsung Watch out of the water." And I like, show you some features, right away that your watch doesn't have, and you're just like, "Yo, this is crazy." I show you, this is how you can automate your life with just this watch. Um, you're like, okay, I understand this product. And it brings me to my second point. You have to have the ability to provide people with a sense of perceived value. You don't buy anything you don't see value in. If when it if it, look, whether it be a vape, or a guitar and whatnot, you see value in owning that product. So yeah, it's the ability to communicate a product as easily as possible, and it's the ability to give people a sense of perceived value. How does this apply to being an artist? Well, this is where we go back to talking about brand. So, you know, your ability to describe what kind of, band you are as easily as possible is what matters. So, I'll give you a scenario. If you're in a bar and you're sitting next to some 50-year-old biker and you get to talking about music, he's like, "Oh yeah, I saw Metallica back in 1980 and this and blah blah blah," and it comes up organically that you happen to be in a band. He's like, "Oh, what kind of music?" What are you gonna tell him?
I would tell him probably like ethereal metal, female fronted.
I'll make it more simple than that. Just tell him you're in a metal band.
Oh yeah.
Because here's the thing, while ethereal metal will, it might do a, good job of like kind of getting the point across or whatever. If he has no reference for that, he's gonna be kind of sitting there like, what is that? If you just tell him metal, you're just like, he knows what to expect. He knows to expect heavy guitars. He knows to expect heavy vocals. Like drums and stuff like that. That then opens the door for you to describe what it is that you do. But the first thing you've done is piqued his interest. The first thing you have to do in selling any product is just pique the first off, make sure people know about it and then pique their interest. So, like in that scenario, you just tell them, I'm in a metal band. But like specifically for y'all, and I'll just throw out like a hypothetical, like thing for y'all. Like instead of just like, oh, we're like ethereal metalcore that's kind of a blend of this and that. Let's say for instance, so first off, um, a big part of your brand is going to be established by Miss Holly over here. Um, would you tend to say she like you kind of have a little bit like a very like fairy esque kind of vibe almost? Yeah, maybe no, kinda
She's more like a alien space woman.
alien space woman.
Yeah.
That's fair. I was just asking because I mean like and this is purely like buzz. What if you just told people you're fairy core? Like, as funny as that might be, it's the kind of thing that like first off, it it'll pique somebody's interest because it's just like you take two. First off, you just take two things that people know. People know what fairies are, and the metal community generally tends to know what core means. You put that together, like, okay, what is that? I'm interested. Um, that's just an example. You don't have to call yourselves fairy core, but like it literally it boils down to that. Like earlier when I was saying, like with Sad Man's Parade, like um, you know, trying to keep it as simple as possible. Like depending on who I'm talking to, anime band, or like melodic hardcore, like keeping it as simple as possible. But it's also about like depend. It depends on who I'm talking to as well because I want to be able to communicate what it is so that they easily understand what it is, but then their interest is still piqued. Um, but that plays a big role in branding because the easier it is for people to understand your brand, the easier it's going to be for them to attach to it. The easier they can attach to it, the easier of a time you're going to have marketing. Knowing what your brand is makes marketing 10 times easier. Um,
Hell yeah.
and that's one thing I take into account a lot. So, it's like, what it boils once you when you start realizing is when you start getting into brand is that, you start learning what niche little things make you unique because then you can, amplify that so that you're not just another face in the crowd. Now you're this unique thing that people haven't seen before, that people, are just like, "Oh, this is different." Even if it isn't necessarily like it's not the first time it's ever been done, but like it's unique enough. Than like, how many times you ever been scrolling Facebook and you see a ad for a band and they're all just standing in the woods or they're all just standing in a band building and they're all just we're Nigel and the White Guys from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Please check. Like like how often do you care?
Yeah. Not really.
All right, I'll give you a new scenario and then we can move on because I've been rambling. I understand that. Let's say Zeal. Let's say you guys write a song and lyrically it's about a breakup. You write all the lyrics, you write everything, you record it, you mix it, you master it, you get it uploaded onto each and every platform, and you decide to run a marketing ad campaign for it. You can you can buy some ad space on social media and go, we're Zeal from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Please check us out. Blah 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 blah. Check out our new song. Blah blah blah. Or you keep it simple, 6 simple words. Send this song to your ex.
Yeah.
With those 6 simple words, what you've done is you've communicated very quickly what the song is about and what they can expect from it. Furthermore, somebody's gonna be scrolling, they're gonna see that and they're gonna like, "Oh, I just went through a breakup. This band is talking to me." They're gonna listen to it, they're gonna hear how much it kicks ass. They're gonna be like, "Yo, this band's cool, their aesthetic is dope, this song is great." Like, subscribe, follow, the whole 9. But, it's an example of being very deliberate with your branding and your marketing.
Yeah.
I could riff on this for a long time. I need you to take me away from this topic. Like,
Okay. No, that's great information for sure. Like I can definitely see how all that like comes into play. I can tell you've been thinking about this a lot too.
like I said, I've been doing an absurd amount of research on sales, marketing, business, and how it applies to being a music artist. It's to the point now I'm thinking about getting into artist management. Like I want to go back to school, maybe get a marketing degree. And then I might get into artist management because what I would love to be able to do is like I'm putting a lot of these philosophies on like my own band, Sad Man's Parade and whatnot as well. But it's also information I'm not trying to gatekeep because what I would love more than anything is to be able to help other people realize what it is that works in sales and marketing and branding and things like that. Because if I can get enough bands, if I, suddenly, Zeal starts making a name for themselves in Milwaukee, suddenly, Still Stayers, blowing up bigger than they ever have. Sad Man Praise doing this and whatnot. If we can get enough people in Milwaukee to start coming up, we can make Milwaukee a staple for heavy music. And for me, if I get my way, it's not even just going to be heavy music. It's going to be music in general.
Hmm.
I'm trying to do. I have this. Maybe this delusion of grandeur a little bit, but like of trying to build something bigger than me.
You're not alone in that. I mean,
I mean, you got this podcast here,
that's
so
why I'm
like,
doing this. Like, because I feel like what a big reason of why I started this podcast is just like the past year, like or the past couple years actually, just like my experience with the music scene, and like I just feel like if we have more like I guess documentation or somebody like doing like a show like this, then that kind of brings a lot more perceived value to our community. You know what I mean? Like because we don't really have anybody else doing like a long form conversation with the talented people in our scene here, and I feel like more people doing that is like what we need
hmm
to make Wisconsin a staple and to show like the world and the country like that the incredible talent that's here.
hmm And I think another big thing about that for me too is like, when a lot of my research, I've also been realizing like one, it's a combination of that and me also like, producing for other artists and whatnot and actually getting the experience of one, getting the licensed music as well as getting to like work with artists that kind of have a little bit of a buzz and a name for themselves and being a part of, their art and their success. Um, it's allowed me to really look at, like the industry in a way that I've never been able to understand it before. And it's put me in a position where I'm like, first, it's put me in a position where I'm like, now I know what I've been doing wrong. Because I think a big thing is a lot of bands still try to operate on what I'm going to call the old model. And what I'm not saying is the old model doesn't work. Like, yeah, you make your music or whatever, and then you get out on the road and you start like, like touring and stuff like that. Like it definitely still works. However, um, supply and demand applies to anything that you are going to be building. And because of the internet that we have now and whatnot, and if you can understand branding and marketing and whatnot, you can make the process of building a name for yourself a lot faster. Because one thing I always say is like, and I'll never discourage anybody from like touring and getting out on the road or anything like that. But there's been so many times where I've heard stories of my friends that are in bands that are like go on tours, and they're like, we spent $5,000 on this shitty van so that we could book this tour and then travel all around the country playing in shitty bars to 6 people. And the only thing I can think that whole time is all that money you spent doing that could have been put into marketing. Could have been put into marketing and getting, building your brand, getting your name out there. The better you build your brand, the better market. The easier go viral on TikTok. Just get one of your songs, to just catch the algorithm and whatnot. Learn how an algorithm works first, and stuff like that. And then maybe consider like a Midwest tour or something like that. Expand outward. Make your money, work for you a lot better than it can.
Hmm.
It like I said before, disclaimer: I'm not saying don't tour.
Well, I mean, we kind of had like had
You had a little.
that experience because we were about to go on tour actually, and it ended up getting canceled, which it probably honestly is for the best
Mm,
because where it was looking was like we were getting down to like the last month before tour, and then we were still having like venues like confused about dates and stuff, and we're like, yeah, no.
mhm.
It just got to a point where we're like, yeah, it probably just isn't even like fiscally responsible at all for us to try to attempt this
Oh
at this
yeah,
point.
that
So,
that's.
but then I think we're gonna, all in all, the things that we're doing instead of putting that money into that are gonna actually like seriously lift our band up rather than the potential playing for 6 people in fucking North Carolina or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Build that brand, baby.
Hmm.
Like honestly, and this is just like the idea I have in my mind of like what I think a good tour strategy is like takes it like become a staple in Milwaukee, then become a staple in Madison. By the time you're a staple in Milwaukee and Madison, you pretty much got most of Wisconsin covered. Then start working your way outwards to Illinois, Minnesota, Iowa and stuff like that. Become a Midwest staple, well, to the point where like, oh, the Midwest knows who Zeal is. Then look to maybe buy onto a tour with a bigger, like a bigger band with a bigger name, so that you can use their brand equity in your favor. Um, and not to get all fancy, but like, yeah, no,
Equity.
that's specifically what the concept is. Is you're using that band's brand equity to help lift you up. Um, and I digress. Build your brand, blah 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 blah. We've covered all of this. But
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Build your brand. Build the brand for your band. All right. So moving on here. Do you want to talk about production a little bit, like the technical side?
um, sure.
I guess. So what would you say are some key techniques that you think every producer should know?
Key technique. So okay, the biggest one above all else, because I could sit here and just like know how a compressor works and this and that, blah blah blah. It's the first one. Know when to stop mixing.
Ooh, that one's good.
Know when to like. One thing I do nowadays that has helped me more than anything is I set myself a timer and I only mix in 45-minute increments. Once the timer goes off, I go outside, get like 5-15 minutes, of fresh air, and let my ears, rest a little bit. Um, Point number two: do not mix loud. Um, because that you're going to fatigue your ears faster, and ear fatigue is very real, and it will affect the way you perceive the frequency range as you're mixing. I got a hair in my mouth, don't mind me. And like how many times you ever gone through the experience where like you obsessively sat there, like mixing something for hours and hours, and you're just like, man, I just can't get it right, and finally you just decide to go to sleep, and you like wake up the next morning, you're just like, wow, I made this worse.
Yeah, it's happened.
Do not mix loud. As a matter of fact, one thing I do often, especially when I'm getting to the point where like I feel like I'm getting a final mix, often what I'll do is I'll turn the volume down like real low, because that'll really tell you what's going on in your mix. Like sometimes you can have your mix, stuff at a certain level and like, everything sounds balanced and whatnot, then you turn it down and you're just like, wow, the vocal's so loud you can't even hear anything else. So then you turn it down. When you turn it back up, the vocal still sounds fine. It's still present and whatnot. But like now all of a sudden, you have a little bit more headroom in that mix. You can, hear the other elements in your mix a little better, stuff like that. So those are the first ones I, would give. The very last one is, and because it could be so easy to rely on, you know, isotopes like Mix Assistant, uh, presets and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, presets are great. There's almost never a time when I'm like recording somebody where like I have a hip hop preset that I built myself. That has like every kind of like vocal effect, every kind of thing I would ever need, already built into it, so that I don't have to sit there futzing around looking for presets and this and blah 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 blah. And it gets me about 80% of the way there, but I do have to sit there and like account for like the way the style of the vocal and this and that and blah blah blah. I still have to actually turn some knobs. But that brings me to my arguably my final one, which is actually learn like the functions of the plugins you're using. Actually, the EQ is going to be the easiest because you can hear, what's going on when you mess with the bands. Actually learn, you know, what a compressor is, what it does, what all the little functions are doing, and how it's affecting that signal. Especially because like compression is one of the hardest things to learn how to listen to. But once I finally got to the point where I learned how to listen to compression properly, it completely changed, my ability to place things in a mix the way I want. Because now I'm not over compressing, and because that's the thing about you over compression is like the one of the best ways you can make a mix that'll fatigue the ear very fast.
Hmm.
Um, you just choke out all your dynamics, so everything's just at the same, like level the whole time and blah blah blah. Yeah, like actually learn how your plugins work. Um, because that's gonna be the thing that really teaches you the most. Because like mixing, it's a lifelong endeavor. Even now, like with I'm finally to the point where I'm making mixes where I'm just like, wow, I don't absolutely hate this. And it's funny because it's been a couple years now since I've been helping produce music, and like one of the biggest things I got to learn from producing hip hop, because it's hip hop and rap and whatnot. Some people, there is a difference, depending on who you talk to. Some people it's just all the same to them. Um, but one thing that taught me is that like the genre itself, it's simplistic in nature. Now don't confuse simple with easy. Like it's simple. It's not easy per se. It took years for me to get good at it, but because it's simplistic in nature, the turnaround time for it is extremely fast. Like to the point where I learned real quick. I don't have time to sit there and nitpick stuff that nobody else is gonna notice because this mix needs to sound good right now. It needs
Yeah.
to sound good right now. I don't have time to sit there and just like, oh, should I notch out minus 4.5 dB or 5 whole dB out of this clap? Nobody's gonna notice that. Does like it needs to sound good right now. You don't have time to be nitpicking. So like the amount of times like I'm just like, all right, it's the you have to have the ability to go, answer the question. Does anything stick out like a sore thumb? No. Did the song get the point across? Yes. It's done. The amount of times I'll sit and I'll listen to mixes that like, people have released after I produce them, I'm like, ugh, I could have changed this, I could have changed that, blah, blah, blah. Too late for all that now. But also nobody else is gonna notice that except you.
Yeah.
Like, um that's one thing that, I'll go so producing rap and hip hop made me better at producing like metal, and stuff like that, and heavy music that has a lot of instruments. Because now I don't sit there and nitpick stuff anymore. I'm just like, it sounds like it sounds like a snare drum. Okay, yep, that definitely sounds like a guitar. Like it.
Well, I'm glad that you came to that realization, because I remember that fucking the Odyssey mix that we were working on for like a year.
No, it was more like years.
Was it?
No, because like
Yeah.
when we originally when the song was originally written and whatnot, and like um admittedly, I did open it up not long ago just to kind of like, because I do like to open up old mixes and just see like what was going on and whatnot, because it's so funny for me to now go just like, I don't know what the hell I was thinking, but like blah 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 blah. Um, that was a fun exercise for me because literally I was just like I just changed, like I spent 15 minutes just changing stuff and finally ended up getting a mix where I'm just like, this is what this is what I wanted it to be the entire time. Like, and it only took me like 15 minutes. I mean, I'm not, it's not like I'm gonna like re-release or anything, but Sad Man's did talk about possibly doing that one live. So
That'd be cool.
maybe. We'll see. But yeah, no, that was one of those like I was just so obsessed with getting that one right, and it was because I just love that song so much. Um but it's also one of those things now where it's like, that's fine, bro. You're gonna write more songs. You're gonna write other songs you like, and it kind of reminds me of a story. I was watching this Bruno Mars interview, and he was talking about when he was first coming up, like before he became like a star, he was like writing like songs for other people, and he was talking about this song he had where like, he played it for somebody. He was like, "Oh, this is a nice song. You should sell it to this artist." And he was like, "Oh, but this is my song. Like, I don't want to, I kind of want to sell it. It means so much to me." And the dude was just like, "What? You not gonna write no more songs? You're not gonna write any more music, bro? Sell it." And so he did, And turns out, yeah, he wrote some more music. Like, um, but that was a big, big lesson for me and whatnot. I guess the lesson there is, like that was also a good example of a song. Like the reason I wasn't able to get it right is because I would obsessively mix it for hours and hours and fatigue my ears and this and that and blah blah blah. And like sometimes I'd end up with a mix where I'm like, oh yeah, this smacks, and then I go back and listen to the next day. I'm just like, uh
That snare is just 10 or like 2 dB too loud or something like that.
mhm.
Just like really nitpicky things.
um because it is one of those things where it's just like, unfortunately, mixing is just one of those things where like you're just gonna suck at it at first. Like, unless unless you're going like full on preset mode, and using, isotopes, like full on, mix assistant and master and stuff, like unless you're doing all that, which, and nothing against that. We have the technology, you might as well use it. But when you want to get to the point where you want real control over it, because there's still an art to it and whatnot. Um, you're just not gonna be great at it at first. But over time, you get better. And I think one thing that did definitely help me was, having to produce other genres. Um, so yeah, that's my last one is be versatile in the kind of stuff that you produce.
Yeah, I'm currently trying to get into more genres because it's just I'm kind of pigeonholed into metal right now.
Hmm.
um, but do you got any new plugins or techniques you've learned recently that you're pretty stoked on?
So there's just stuff that I really like doing because like I'm to the point now with my mixing where like it's very rare that I have to go refer to a tutorial for something. Um Nowadays I'm just, if I have a question about something, I just try it and I figure it out. One of my favorite things I do nowadays, especially in like metal mixes, is um I sidechain my snare to damn near everything. Um like the I sidechain it to, cuz like there's a common one of like sidechain your kick to your bass, so that you can get your kick and your bass to play well together and stuff
Hmm.
like that. And then I also remember learning, like they're like you can also, sidechain the snare, the guitars and whatnot. And I was like, "Oh, cool. This really helps put the snare in front of the mix or whatever." And then I was just like, "Okay, but you know what? I'm sidechain to the guitars, and I'm gonna sidechain it to the bass, and then I'm gonna sidechain it to all these synths and these leads and like so, and it's just a great way to really make sure that you have a snare that just punches through the mix every time. Now because you're side chaining, no, the other benefit to that personally for me is because you're doing that much side chaining, you can be a lot more subtle with the side chain on each compressor.
Hmm.
Because it's just like no matter what happens, you just know that snare is just gonna be there. It's not gonna get drowned out or anything. It's always gonna pop every time. Another one I learned just recently, I was just because sometimes when I'm driving, I'll just like, throw on like I'll just let YouTube play like, audio stuff, mixing and stuff like that. There was a trick I learned recently that actually makes me want to get soothed too. So
Great plugin.
you have it?
Yeah.
All right, so
I use it on a lot of shit.
there's a trick I just learned recently. So you know how Soothe 2 has a sidechain feature?
Mhm.
So what you can do is you can take your main vocal, make a copy of it, and then you take a pitch shifter and you pitch it up or down one semitone. So it's like, okay, well now it's gonna be out of tune. And then you mute it. And then what you do is you sidechain you put Soothe 2 on the regular vocal and you sidechain the out of tune vocal to that one and you set it up in a way so that it will attenuate only notes that are not in that key.
Okay.
Like so basically like it sometimes without like how you go through and like when you're peak filtering and like getting rid of resonant frequencies and
Mhm.
whatnot. You do that. Sometimes I'll take it a step further if I feel like there's a certain like especially if there's a resonant frequency that I can hear that it's like not only is this like resonating a way I don't like, but it's also not like in key like with the rest of the song. I'll go through and like notch it out and whatnot. That trick will literally just do that for you, except to every pitch that's not in that key.
Okay. I'll have to try that.
I'm gonna find the video that I learned it from and send it to you because they do a better job of explaining it than I just did. But like, I remember like as soon as he said it, like I had to run it back. I'm like, did I hear that right? And it blew my mind. Like I was just like, whoa. So I literally been sitting here like manually with an EQ, just attenuating like frequencies that like I just like didn't like or whatever. I'm just like yeah, I can just grab one
So,
plugin that'll
do
do
you
that.
do you have, like, a dynamic EQ or something that you use for something like that?
Um, so I do have a dynamic EQ, and I actually most of the time when I'm side chaining nowadays, I actually do like to use the dynamic EQ because like I'll still use just like regular sidechain compression with like the kick to the bass because bass frequencies they're non-directional like the lower you go.
Mhm.
So it's not really gonna matter. But like when you get to the point where like you're side chaining to like anything that you might be spreading out in the stereo field, I like to use it especially because sometimes like I don't want to duck the entire instrument. I just want to duck a specific frequency range,
Mhm.
and that's where the dynamic EQ comes into play because I can set it up and literally like set the threshold so like every time my snare hits, my mid range on my guitar will just duck down a little bit instead of stuff like that.
Hell yeah.
Um,
Um, so you wanna I mean, we kinda talked about it a little bit, but do you wanna get into some more Sad Man's stuff?
um,
Or I don't know, did we talk enough about Sad Man's?
I mean, what do you want to know? Like, I don't want to say there's certain things we're gonna try to keep under wraps or anything like that, but like
Well, I guess, what did we talk about, like, the writing process for the material you guys
a
I mean
little bit. When I had mentioned earlier when I was talking about how like the way I write with Andy,
Mhm.
um, that's how a lot of Sad Man's Parade, stuff was written. Because when I first got into it was we were originally known as the Better Half,
Yep,
and
I
it was
remember
about
that.
2018 when I finally got over there, listening to the music or whatever, and I was like, "Yo, this is incredible." Um, and I feel like this is another good example of by then I had already learned how to put my ego, to the side and whatnot. Because when I was like, yeah, no, I want to be in this band. They're like, all right, great. So since you're gonna be in the band, do you like want to like rewrite any of your guitar parts and this? And I'm just like, no, these songs smack. Just teach me the parts. There was a couple here and there where I was like, maybe try this and that, but like other than that, I was like, no, these songs are damn near perfect. There's no need to change them. Um, the only thing, what really helped me get into the actual writing aspect is at the time, Andy kind of had this thing where he was really good at writing like minute and a half long songs. They were basically like anime intros and anime outros
Mhm.
and stuff. Um, what I was really good at doing was coming through and like basically writing the rest of it. But then from that point on, and because when Andy and I first started writing, like first off, he was very, very, very like he's a very introverted dude. And at the time, I'm pretty much almost bordering on antisocial. Like he's since then, like he's come out of his shell. He, it's easy to talk to him, have a conversation with him, stuff like that. But at the time, like I said, he's like super introverted, pretty much bordering on antisocial. Um, but he was also, because he was so used to just writing by himself. Um, he was very much somebody that, it was easy for him to be married to his ideas and whatnot. And that's actually what ended up prompting me, because the thing is, like, yeah, he'd be married to his ideas, but they would always be great ideas. Like, because the thing is, he's good at writing, specifically, he's good at writing heavy music, like heavy melodic stuff, and he's really good at EDM. Like, I don't even go out of my way to listen to EDM. He's written some of the most insane EDM I've ever heard in my life. I'm like, okay, yo, this smacks. Um, but and he's even since then he's gotten a lot better at, like co-writing and whatnot, and being open to other ideas and stuff like that too. Because it's just something you got to learn when you start writing with people for the first time.
Mhm.
And like when you start off, all you know is just writing by yourself. It what works for you and what doesn't. You know what you do and don't like. So it becomes weird when you have to start accounting for other people's, influences and stuff. But that's actually what prompted I figured it out. I'm like, if I have a song idea, even if it's like a full song, um, I'll just bare bones it as much as possible. Like real basic, chord progression, real basic riff, real basic drums, and then just hand it off to him and just like, all right, andify this, like make this fancy. And then he'll,
And defy
yeah,
this.
he'll do it. He'll like, this is what I came up with, and he was like, "What do you think?" I'm like, "This is perfect." Like,
Send it.
um, but that's a lot of the process, too, because I think the song, and I know I've shown you the music before, but I don't know how familiar you are with like the songs and whatnot. But one of the first songs, "Fracture," that was one of the first ones where I had like a lot of big input, because that was one of the ones where it was only like a minute and a half long or whatever, and
Mhm.
I came in and basically like wrote the rest of it. Um, but it's that, a lot of the actual instrumental is like between like Andy and I. And then a lot of the actual lyrical content is between Sam and I. At least predominantly that's the way it used to be.
Mhm.
Sam was supposed to be in the band and whatnot, and he was in the better half, and then he was supposed to be the original drummer, but then just too busy and he couldn't manage it and whatnot. But he's still a big part of the writing process.
Mhm.
Because I love his lyrical writing style. I love a lot of his lyrical ideas and whatnot. And uh, it's really easy to write lyrics with him. Um, there was a couple of times when we were working where I know like Fracture was a good example of like. So the thing about Sam is he tends to write lyrics in a very purposefully ambiguous manner. Um, so you can have your own interpretation of it and stuff like that. Well, that's what ended up happening a lot of times, because I took, the lyrics he already had written for Fracture, added my own, and then, when he read them, he's like, "Oh, so this doesn't the direction I was thinking about this going, so I'm kind of want to rewrite these." And I'm just like, "Damn it." But then we met up one day, and I was just like, "All right, cool." We hung out, played some video games, laughed and stuff like that. And I was like, "All right, so we should rewrite these lyrics." And he was just like, "Oh, I decided they're fine." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. So you listened to the demo I made?" And he's like, "Oh no." And I'm like, "You didn't even listen to the demo yet?" And he's like, "No." And then I played it for him. He's like, "Oh yeah, this smacks." Um, but like and it kind of goes back what we were saying earlier of like, leaving the ego at the door and whatnot, and like, at the end of the day, what's most important is making it a song, because sometimes the song and the art isn't always gonna end up going in the direction that you initially intended. But sometimes you end up making a masterpiece if you just allow yourself to follow that song and that piece of art where it wants to go.
Look, yeah. So what I agree with that 100%, by the way. So what so like when are you guys, I guess, planning on like actually like coming out, I guess, like in if you're comfortable sharing that.
Oh yeah. So right now, we're we have plans to be having our first public appearance, like our first like public show, end of the year. Um, talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, that's the plan. So right now we're just we're pulling artwork together, promotional material together, things like that, and uh as of right now, like the stuff we're gonna have together, it's gonna be the minimum amount of stuff that we want pulled together, because in terms of like the marketing and the way we want to go about marketing our stuff, um we have this very very unique idea that it's I mean it's not like it hasn't been done before, but we I haven't there's very few bands that have done it. um this very unique idea we want to do that I'm going to keep under wraps for now, but it's going to be it's going to be very very time and money and intensive. It's going to cost a lot, but the actual product itself is going to be worthwhile, because like it's the kind of thing where it's like, first off, bands just aren't doing this. Um, but what I can tell you it does is that it gives people a reason to become invested in not just the music but the lore of the band. And that's one thing I actually wanted to say earlier that I forgot about. But like, not only just with building your brand and whatnot, but like, it's more than just music. Creating your ability to create, not just an image, create like a world around your art. Create, something for people to invest in. Create lore. Um, like for the Taylor Swift, a good example of like every time she comes out with a new album, her fans are always like, you know, oh, who's this song about now? Who's she, like what ex is she talking about this time? Like, blah 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 blah. They're invested in the lore,
Mhm.
you know, that is, Taylor Swift. That there are other ones where sometimes the lore is just, like, with a lot of rappers, the lore is like the lifestyle and how they came up, and things like that. Um, but if you have more than just the music, if you have an actual story to tell, and it doesn't have to actually, like fictional like story or anything like that. If there's some sort of lore that people can become invested in, they're much more likely to attach to it.
Yeah, I agree with that for
So
sure.
that's the big thing we're doing in terms of the way we want to market. That's what we're doing.
I would say, like, just as an example of that, like the Juggernaut record from Periphery, like that was like what like essentially drew me into that band. And then like learning about like the whole like story behind it and stuff, like
Mm-hmm.
no, there's definitely weight behind that, is like having lore to your band and shit.
Mm-hmm. No, like it's the same reason you get invested in shows. Like
Mhm.
you know, ha- you ever just watched a show just because you didn't care about the storyline, just the action was just that great.
Yeah.
Like it, no, like that. There's still some form of storytelling that allows that action to happen. And there are very few bands that can get away with just the music nowadays. A lot of them tend to be like, like more like progressive or the like the techie stuff where, you're listening to it to, appreciate the virtuoso nature of the music and of the musicians themselves. Um, but beyond that, that's one big thing that'll help with, branding and whatnot is, having lore and having a story to tell. Even so first off, if I can go and like back to the concept of like individual branding, like as just like yourself. I remember hearing like a cool concept, once of it was basically like you have a strong personal brand if people can dress up as you for Halloween and other people know who they're trying to dress up as. If like somebody dresses up as you and you like they go to a Halloween party like, "Oh shit, are you Ryan Brett?" You have a strong personal brand. Um you do the same thing basically, it's the same thing on a larger scale, with like being an artist, like and being in a band. If you can have like strong symbolism that like people see this symbol and they know, oh, that's Zeal. Like, you have a strong personal brand. The easier it is for people to identify you, the stronger your brand is.
Oh yeah.
And that's what Sad Man's Parade is trying to do is we're just establishing a very, very strong personal brand.
Oh yeah. And that I think that's gonna I know what it is. Y'all don't know yet, but no, that's it's gonna be dope. I think you guys are gonna fucking. I'm like really excited for you guys to like come out with shit because I just you guys are gonna fucking take off.
You're
Dude. It's
making me
gonna
blush.
be awesome. So thanks for coming on the show,
Thanks
man.
for letting me ramble for almost
So
2 hours.
I have one last wrap up question.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you could go back in time to when you started your musical journey and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Um, if I could go back in time, like as in like give like younger me like advice, um, the optimism you have behind the potential of other people's ability to be great is like that's cute, that's beautiful and all, but be realistic about it. Um, I admittedly, and there's really no way to put this without it. I guess it's sounding bad and whatnot, but like, I did unfortunately kind of go through a process where like, I I realized there were some instances where I've been involved in some projects where I kind of held myself back and made myself smaller for the sake of other people's comfort zone, and it's hard because like I now look like there's a lot of opportunities like I look back on now that like I I missed out on and I passed up that could have had me a lot further along than I am now. Um, and I don't, I'm not mad at myself for that and wanting to see the best in people and whatnot. I still like to see the best in people. Um, I just I would have opted to be more realistic about it. Um, because one thing I've been trying to live by as well is like um you know people will show you exactly who they are on a long enough timeline, through their words, through their action, like it's and a lot of times always through like the small things they'll say. um it's that, but also I feel like I'd also just tell myself to be a little more authentic, to myself, or whatever. There's a period of time where like admittedly I was trying to like present myself, as being, like this certain way and just like, I'm just like this, uber, like nice guy and this and like, and like, don't get me wrong, cause I like, I treat everybody kindly, I made this whole big fuss about like not having an ego and this and that and blah, 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 blah. But like, it's being a lot more realistic about it. And like, a lot of the way I would carry myself and present myself to people was that like I didn't want to come across as somebody who was like, a diva or fussy or hard to work with and or something like that. But like really all I kind of did was just lower my own standards and, kept myself from making the kind of growth that I could have. You know, it's okay, like, as like I said, like make sure you're still, humble about it and leave your ego at the door. But it's okay to acknowledge your, your talent and how good you are. You know, I, I like one of my favorite quotes is confidence is it's not they're not affirmations that you speak to yourself in the mirror or anything like that. True confidence is a stack of irrefutable evidence that proves that you are exactly who you say you are. And I had always long since had, the proof and the evidence that, I should have, there are opportunities I should have taken and whatnot, that you would have helped me because like, I've gotten to, I've gotten to hear, for so long in my music career, like, oh, you're so, good. And this, not like to the point, like, I'm, you know, like I said, as humble as I can say this, I know I'm good. You know, and if anything, I'm actually grateful for that because like when I first started playing an instrument, it was one of the first times I'm just where I had a moment where I'm like, yo, I'm actually good at this, and I really like doing it. Um, so it just be honest and whatnot. And the thing is, one thing is you can't you're not always going to be able to control how other people view you. Like you can definitely have a big influence on it. Um, in the way you carry yourself and stuff like that. But ultimately, more often than not, like your actions are going to reveal your true character over time. Um, so yeah, confidence is a stack of irrefutable evidence that you are exactly the person that you say you are. And as long as you have that confidence, it's actually one thing that's helped with my imposter syndrome. You ever experienced imposter syndrome before, of like feeling like, oh man, I feel like I'm not worthy enough to be doing this and this, blah 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 blah
Yeah,
blah. Um,
definitely.
you fight that by having a stack of irrefutable evidence that you are exactly who you say you are. Have the proof that you're that good, and then you don't have to be arrogant. You don't have to be you know full of yourself because you have the proof. That's actually more than anything, I feel, what allows me to leave my ego at the door, because like going back to the whole concept of like like when you're working with other people and stuff like that. um I'm confident enough in my abilities where if somebody shoots down one of my ideas, I'm not going to get in my feelings about it, because okay, I'll just come up with a different idea, because all that matters is getting this song as good as possible. I don't know. I kind of went off on a tangent there. I've been doing this entire podcast.
Tangent Johnson.
Tangent Johnson.
All right, dude. Thanks for coming on so much, dude. You're awesome.
Thank you, man. It's good to see you.
Keep doing you, bro.
I
You're
absolutely
fucking
will.
killing the game.
And
I can't wait to see like all the things you do in the future, dude.
man, I appreciate that, and I can't wait to see Zeal become huge. You guys are
We're
wonderful.
working on it. I can't wait to play shows. We gotta play shows together for sure.
Absolutely. No,
Next
you
year,
you
let's
guys are one of the
fucking-
first.
Let's
and
lock that
something,
shit in. It's happening. Next year we're playing shows together.
Let's heckin' go. Let's fucking go.
All right, guys. This has been Midwest Slamcast with Jae Luther, the producer.
Jae Luther, the producer. Hey.
All right, let's get out of here.
All right, boss.
All right, see ya, everybody.